Yep, you read that right. We're talking about King versus Blast in this one, and what would happen in the said encounter between them. And alright, of course, I'm aware that both of these guys are very polarizing characters, and just hypothesizing about what would happen in an encounter between them is polarizing as well. But come on, it's just fun, guys, and it's pretty intriguing too. I mean, if you're not just like a full-blown hater, this is pretty interesting to you, and you've probably thought about this yourself. Like, what would happen if these two characters were to meet? So I want to use this video as a device to talk about that stuff, because I actually also think that it's probably a good possibility that they might meet in the future of the story. So that's, but also, you know, I have to get into webcomic spoiler stuff in order to accurately do that. Not enough has happened in the manga yet for us to, talk about this in full. So if you don't want to know what's going to happen, I suggest you check out now. So at this point, I think it's an inevitability that Blast is going to be reintroduced into the story. I mean, he might very well get like his own arc. Like, since chapter 106 of the webcomic, he has just been consistently talked about. Like, almost every new chapter, we get a new development on this guy. And like, even in the manga, way before chapter 107 of the webcomic, Blast has been kind of like recurring so far. Like, we got that new info about him and Elder Centipede in chapter 84, and then we got that big reveal in chapter 119 about him possibly being semi-retired and Drive Knight fearing him and whatnot. So I think Blast is coming, and it's just a matter of time until he does. And when he does, I think one of the events that we're going to get in that is his encounter with King. So why would Blast encounter King? Well, he is a hero after all, and he's probably going to be reintroduced to just the entire S-Class. And I think a good reason for him to talk to King is because King is known as the strongest man in the world. And let's just go into that for a second, because so if King is the strongest man in the world and Blast is the S-Class rank 1 hero, why isn't Blast known as the strongest man in the world? So there's probably like one or two reasons why that is. And the first one I think is maybe because Blast is quote-unquote semi-retired, as Second Gar says. So since he isn't active anymore, King, therefore, is known as the strongest man in the world, since he has, in theory, the best feats, which are, like Saitama's feats. Maybe. Or it means that King's feats, aka Saitama's feats, just surpass Blast's feats, and would indicate that maybe King is seen as stronger than Blast. Although, it kind of conflicts with the hype on Blast at the same time, but there's this weird ambiguity between the difference in power between King and Blast that not a lot of light has been shed on yet. In fact, Fubuki in the data book says that Blast is stronger than King, meaning that she's saying that Blast is stronger than King's achievements. So I think that it's probably a good time in the story for this to be addressed. So let's say the S-Class is having a meeting or something, and Blast walks up to King and he's like, "So you're the strongest man on Earth, huh?" And this brings up the question of, would Blast be intimidated or just straight up scared of King's aura? In order to answer this, we're going to have to go back to the strongest character to be intimidated or scared of King, and that is Golden S. So Golden S, pretty much almost literally crapped his pants because of how scared he was of the notion of King using his wave motion cannon. So there doesn't really seem to be, at least at this point in time, a cap to how strong someone can be to be fearful of King's aura. Because, the consensus is more or less that Golden S is high dragon, above dragon, somewhere around there. And Blast, is very likely around there. I personally think that he's way stronger than Golden S, but I don't necessarily think that power really has to do with one overcoming King's aura or just being fearful of him in general. Because, if we go back to Hero Hunter Garo, he willingly attacked King. I mean, he was still under the influence of the aura because he perceived King to be this perfect being with no blind spot, and still attacked him nonetheless. But I think that more so goes into Garo's inherent disposition. He's just pretty much crazy, I guess, and he'll just attack anyone and has little to no fear. So does that mean that this would happen with Blast? Well, I think Blast is probably a little crazy too. I mean, he did kill the ninja younglings, or at least allegedly he did. At this point in time, there is no 100% confirmation that he did in fact take out the ninja younglings. It's just heavily implied by Sonic that he did. we haven't seen any bodies or like any kind of confirmation yet. So it's just up in the air at this point, but we'll just say for now that Blast is capable of taking out younglings, so he's kind of crazy, meaning that he would probably not be, I would say, scared of King, maybe not even intimidated, but I think that at the minimum, he would definitely respect King. So he wouldn't just automatically like see King as a chump or something. I don't think Blast is that ridiculously powerful as to where he could just straight up see through the aura. So I think we would set that baseline relationship, or at least initial relationship between the two of them. So then one thing leads to another, and these two might square off in some way. So either they both try to fight a monster at the same time or something, like maybe a monster appears when they're together, or Blast just straight up challenges King to a sparring match because he wants to see how powerful King is for himself. Because, you know, if King is the strongest man on Earth and more or less the symbol of peace and like the defender of humanity, Blast himself wants to know that humanity is in good hands while he is, you know, quote unquote semi-retired. Because obviously that's something that Blast would be interested in, at least I think so. So he'd be like, you know what, let me see how powerful you are, let's spar. And this isn't uncommon. I mean, we saw it happen with Atomic Samurai. So if Blast were to start sparring King, or at least challenge him to, then one of many things would happen at this point. So King might just be able to convince Blast to not fight him. This is possible because he did it to Atomic Samurai. Now, of course, Blast is way more powerful than Atomic Samurai, at least in theory, and probably is more stern and forthright than he is. I mean, in theory as well. So he's just like, no, we're fighting. There's no way you're talking out of this. But if he is able to convince Blast to not fight him, because, I don't know, he's like, hey, if we were to fight, the Earth would be destroyed or something. And then maybe Blast is like, yeah, you're right. So maybe Blast decides to settle it in a different way, kind of like how Atomic Samurai did, because instead of having them spar, he was like, okay, cut the apple. So maybe Blast does something like, I don't know, like a test of strength or something, like, hey, King, let me see you lift that abandoned building over there, or, you know, just something like that. It really could be anything. And then this might be how the fight is decided, just like with Atomic Samurai, because, like, King pretty much didn't do anything to the apple, and it blew Atomic Samurai's friggin' mind. So maybe King does something similar with this test that Blast wants him to perform. Maybe he does nothing, or maybe whatever he does do convinces Blast that he is as strong as the legend makes him out to be, and then that's good enough for Blast, and then he walks away. Although that would be repetitive, of course, considering that happened with Atomic Samurai. Another instance is that Blast just straight up attacks him, like Garo did. And he's like, you know what, I just want to see your strength, so let's see what you got. So at this point, I think we know what's going to happen, and that somebody is going to come fight Blast for King. Now, at this point, it could be a monster. Now, the monster is not trying to defend King, but we have seen multiple times throughout the series, just monster attacks randomly happen at opportune times. Either there's like a monster attack nearby and it causes like an explosion, and then Blast like stops and it's like, all right, I gotta go take care of that. And then that's how King runs away or something like that. Or a monster just randomly shows up and he's like, oh my God, Blast and King in the same place? I gotta take them both out. I gotta strike while the iron's hot. And then that's how, you know, Blast fights the monster or something, and then King goes away. Or, I don't know, Blast apparently has beef with a whole bunch of monsters or something. We don't know the extended history on him, but he's been around for a while. He's been taking, you know, matters into his own hands. So maybe there's like a monster that's been tracking Blast or something. And now that he's made himself public again, then he goes out and fights Blast, and then that's how King comes away. This is all possible stuff, in my opinion. So if it's not a monster, then that of course means it's going to be a hero. And another likely instance, I think, here is that another S-Class hero just randomly shows up because, let's say, hypothetically, they're coming from that S-Class meeting, you know, that we're just talking about here. And then the S-Class hero shows up and he's like, not so fast, King. You think you're gonna hog fighting Blast all for yourself? I'm fighting Blast, not you. And it could be somebody super competitive and a little crazy, you know, kind of like maybe Atomic Samurai or even Silverfang. It could be like, you back off, you'll have it after me. And then like Blast, I don't know, diverts his attention to the S-Class hero that wants to fight him, and then that's how King escapes. And also at the same time, this is a device to establish how powerful Blast truly is. So like an S-Class hero would job to Blast in this instance. And of course, if it's not another S-Class hero, then it's Saitama, because, you know, that is King's ultimate weapon, and he has saved him numerous times, and this could be no difference. But at the same time, this could be how we get Saitama versus Blast, or at least the first encounter of it, round one, if you will. Because, like, Saitama sees that Blast is, you know, encountering King, and Saitama is the only one that knows the truth about King, so he's like, I gotta protect him. So then he steps in and he's like, you know what, King, you can go. I got this. And then, you know, Saitama steps in front of Blast and deflects like his initial strike or something, you know, something like that. And then Blast is now intrigued by Saitama because he's like, oh, this A-Class hero is powerful enough to contend with me, and King respects him. But also, you know, at the same time, if Blast is the bearded worker, then this whole interaction will be different. But, you know, just in theory, this could be how that fated matchup happens, at least initially. And then there is another thing that could happen, one that I personally don't want to happen, but I think it is a possibility, and that is Blast straight up exposes King. Like, I'm not, like, delusional to the fact that this could happen in the story. Now, like I said, I certainly hope it doesn't, but there could be a time where King is exposed. And maybe not to the entire world, but at least to another character that's not Saitama, and it might be Blast. Like, Blast goes at King, and then his aura just isn't working at this point because, I don't know, Blast is just too powerful or something. And then King's like, no, please don't kill me. I'm a weakling. I'm sorry. I've been lying. And then Blast stops, and he's like, I knew it. Pathetic. And then maybe he just walks away from King, like leaving him peeing his pants or something, or he, like, I don't know, afflicts King or something and hurts him because he's pissed, like, that he's been living a lie this whole time. And then maybe that's how Saitama comes and fights Blast. But in the end, that would make Blast the victor over King. I just hope that the entire story goes to completion with King never being exposed and his luck always comes to help him. I think that would be cool. I, you know, would just find comfort in that, of course. But I'm not opposed to him being exposed, especially by Blast. I think that would be super interesting and a major event for the series. But that's pretty much it for the video and how I see the scenarios of Blast and King going, at least for now, until we get more developments on Blast and King's abilities, of course. But let me know what you think about this matchup in the comments. It's all fun, guys. It's all hypothetical stuff, so I hope you have fun with it as well. And if you liked the video, please give it a like. I also have a Patreon, gives you access to a weekly Q&A, and if you haven't already, please subscribe as well. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.